What are the latest crimes that are trendy amongst criminals and scammers? Let's get right to it and start it with. Number 5. No time in Vegas. A woman named Wendy Rose Jones robbed not one or two, but 3 men of their Rolex watches. The Rolex watches our crafty little thief stole are worth more than $100,000 all told. Jones' first victim was a man she met at a cafe. After the meeting, the man suggested they go to a hookah bar in the area, and so they did. On getting to the bar, Jones encouraged the man to drink all his alcohol. This left him feeling drowsy, and he woke up the next day at the valet area in a hotel across the street. When he woke up, his expensive Rolex watch was missing. But worse than that, he didn't even know what time it was. It could have been seriously any time, and the man wouldn't have known. Can you imagine? But that was just one victim. Jones would go on to do roughly the same thing to 2 other men. Another of her victims met her in the Vesper Bar in Vegas, and she introduced herself to him as Rosa. After talking to him for a while, she accompanied him to his room where they ordered room service and margaritas. Jones encouraged the man to drink up all his margaritas as well, and he soon got drowsy and fell asleep. After he fell asleep, Jones stole his Rolex worth about $37,000. She also stole about $1,500 from his wallet for good measure. The third victim of our prolific scammer Wendy Rose Jones was a man who invited her up to his room after meeting her at a casino. They ordered room service as well, and the man fell asleep soon after. By the time the man woke up, he was missing $45,000 and an iPhone 12. One thing that all Jones's victims had in common was that they all felt like they had been drugged. Unfortunately for Jones, her victims were able to describe her, and she was quickly identified from surveillance feeds. That was what ultimately led to her arrest. Right now, she faces 3 counts of felony grand larceny. It may not shock you to learn that our dear Wendy Rose Jones isn't the only lady of the night pulling tricks like this. There was another pulling the same sort of scam, and her name is Ashley Trahan. Trahan stole a Rolex watch worth about $45,000 from her victim. She also ransacked his wallet for $400 and a casino ticket worth $184, which is kind of overkill, really. According to the victim, he had been gambling at a casino when he met a woman named Kayla. He chatted with Kayla a bit before going to the bathroom while leaving his drink unattended. By the time he was back, he felt drowsy and had a hard time walking. Kayla, whose real name was Ashley Trahan, then escorted the victim back to his hotel room. When the victim woke up the next morning, he realized that his watch, cash, and casino ticket were gone. Trahan was arrested a while later, and when she was confronted with the details of her crime, she denied it all. However, when the police showed her surveillance footage to substantiate their claims, she admitted that she had been at the casino that day. Once she was booked, the police realized that she also had outstanding arrest warrants related to another crime. In any case, Trahan has now been released and charges are yet to be brought against her. People having too much to drink, blacking out, and losing a ton of money in Vegas. How unusual. Number 4. It's our house now. Xue Wang, Xing Ling, and Ling pulled the old sell a house you don't own while the real owners of the property are outside the country bit. Total classic. The goal of the fraud was to sell the home, which they did. But how on earth did these 3 people complete this scheme? The 3 suspects used fake IDs to substantiate their identities as the owners of the home. With the aid of these fake ID cards and other fake documents, they were able to get Narusan Vivekanantharaja, the real estate lawyer, to broker a private sale for them. However, the scammers just didn't use ID cards to deceive. They made sure they were the perfect clients. They had all the documents they needed for the deal to go through. They were so prepared that Narusan said that he had never met homeowners as prepared to sell their homes as them. Their level of preparation meant that the sale was hitch-free. Before long, they had connived to sell the home for $840,000. The scammers made sure that the sale was private and that the home wasn't posted on MLS, a platform where real estate agents share information about properties for sale. The sale went through, and under normal circumstances, that would have been the end. They would have gotten away with selling a home they didn't own. Unfortunately for the trio of fraudsters, their plan wasn't airtight. They had planned to transfer the money from the completed sale to a new account that had never been used. The attempt to transfer these funds alerted the bank, and a list of suspicious things about the transaction started popping up. For example, the bank ran a check on the ID submitted for the transaction, and they discovered it was a potential fake. That was all they needed to call Narusian, the lawyer who brokered the sale, for further checks. When Nerusian heard that the submitted ID cards could be fake and that there was an attempt to move funds into a new account, he decided to investigate further. Nerusian decided to visit the sold house and see what was happening for himself. That was when he discovered that the people who had paraded themselves as the owners of the home were scammers. He found a pile of mail in front of the house, which showed that people hadn't lived in the house for a while. He then spoke to the neighbors around the house, and they informed him that the real owners of the house had gone away to China. Once it was clear that the people who sold the house were scammers, all that remained was the question of how to catch them. To do this, Nerusian, the bank, and the police organized a sting operation. They asked the scammers to come to a particular branch of the bank to complete their transaction, since they were yet to move the money. The scammers fell for the invitation, and once they arrived at the bank, plainclothes police officers arrested them. Thankfully, the purchasers of the house had title insurance, so they received the money they paid for the house in full. Now, the three scammers are facing a charge of fraud of over $5,000, which seems a little light considering they literally stole a house. Can you imagine coming home from a vacation and having people living in your house? It's hard enough to return from a vacation, ready to loathe your non-vacation life, only to find out someone stole where you live. Number 3. We have them. Chelsea Gates was scammed by someone who pretended to have kidnapped her mom to extract a $100 ransom from her. This scam is clever, and it's little wonder Chelsea fell for it. The scammer called Chelsea and found a way to send the wrong information to her caller ID. So instead of the scanner's number showing up, it was Chelsea's mom's number. When Chelsea picked up the call, she thought she was speaking to her mother, and what she heard horrified her. Chelsea first heard her mother crying, then heard another man grab the phone. The man informed her that he had held her mother hostage and wasn't going to let her go until he received a ransom payment of $1,000. However, instead of hanging up the call after making his demands, the scammer told Chelsea not to hang up and to transfer the money through Cash App while the conversation was ongoing. This meant that Chelsea couldn't confirm the whereabouts of her mother from third-party sources. At the time, Chelsea's mother worked as a home healthcare attendant, which meant that she often visited patients in their homes. Chelsea believed that one of the patients had taken her hostage and tried to renegotiate the ransom because she didn't have up to $1,000. She tried to ask the kidnapper for proof of life and was immediately met with aggressive threats. It was clear he didn't want her to speak to her mother. Chelsea had no choice in the matter and simply went along with his demands. She told the scammer that she had just $100, and the scammer told her to send it. After sending the money, the kidnapper cut the call. Chelsea called her mother's number again and realized that no one had kidnapped her. Instead, she had just fallen for an audacious scam. Unfortunately, Chelsea isn't the only person to have fallen for these sorts of scams. In November, one woman posted on TikTok about how she fell for the same sort of scam. Someone spoofed her phone number and then called her stepfather, threatening to hurt her if he didn't send them $1,500. There was another case of a man who just dropped his daughter off at the airport and received a call from her phone demanding $1,500 for her life. Telemarketers are getting really aggressive these days, aren't they? Number 2. The antivirus virus. Carmen Chesimore was fleeced of over $40,000 through an email scam, and he may never get that money back. One day, 87-year-old Carmen Chesimore was using his computer when he received an email from Norton Antivirus. The email said that Carmen was about to be charged $419 for some subscription or other. Carmen was a Norton customer, so he quickly wrote back that he didn't need the subscription and needed the charges canceled. If only Carmen knew that by writing back, he had fallen into the fraudster's trap. The fraudsters replied and told him that he would be refunded the $419 charged to his account. But then they told him instead of $419, they had mistakenly deposited $41,900 instead. The scammers were able to hack into his computer and show him a screenshot of his bank account that said he had $41,900 extra in it. Armed with this knowledge, Carmen decided to do the right thing and refund the money. The fraudsters informed him not to tell anybody about the refund as it was confidential. So when Carmen went to the bank to send the money, he told the teller he was merely paying back a loan to an old friend. When Carmen got another mail from Norton a few days later asking for $20,000 more, he realized that he had been scammed. That was when he told his daughter about the matter. After hearing about it, his daughter decided to blame the bank. According to her, they should have asked Carmen more questions when he went in to transfer the money. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter now. The money has now disappeared into the hazy maze of bank accounts, and Carmen is unlikely to get his money back. It's a shame we don't have antiviruses to protect us from scammers. Before we get to our last entry, if you are loving these stories, definitely stay on this video to watch our previous release about people you thought you could have trusted. Number 1. The gift card giveaway. Jackie. An Australian woman named Jackie was scammed by internet fraudsters who claimed to be her boss merely 3 days after starting work at her new job. The scam itself wasn't extremely sophisticated, and perhaps that's the reason why it's so shocking that she fell for it. After Jackie began working at the new place, she got an interesting email from someone who claimed to be her boss. The email said that Jackie shouldn't inform anyone about its contents and that the office was planning to purchase 15 Apple gift cards for staff members for Christmas. The email rounded up by asking Jackie to get the cards. Jackie thought this was a good idea and quickly responded. She asked if there was a company credit she could use, and the imposter responded by saying that she should buy the gift cards herself and keep the receipts so that she would be reimbursed, a request Jackie thought was unusual. Gift cards. Jackie didn't want to argue because she had just started working at the company. She did as she was told and bought 15 Apple gift cards worth around $1,500. So she got the cards and sent them with the receipts over to the email address. But then, Jackie got another email asking her to purchase 20 more gift cards. Jackie found this request even more unusual, but she did it anyway. This made her total bill add up to $3,500. After sending the 20 gift cards over, she got a third email asking her to purchase even more gift cards. At this point, alarm bells started ringing. Not literally, that would be weird, but in her head. So Jackie sent an email to another boss trying to confirm the transaction. The boss immediately called her and asked her if she had bought any gift cards. She replied that she had, and her boss informed her that she had been scammed. Her money, all $3,500 of it, had disappeared just because she fell for the wrong email. Looks like Apple wasn't the only one ripping off someone this time.
Philip Bersequot used his Haitian background and his radio show to gain the trust of his Haitian listeners and then stole their money. And Tyler Tisdale stole money from his trusting clients, people such as NFL quarterbacks Carson Palmer and Matt Castle, and his own parents. Let's get right to the scammers who had everyone's trust. Philip Bersequot used his position on a popular radio show in Florida to compel the hard-working Haitian community into giving him their money for massive returns. He made promises of using investors' money in the Forex market for unbelievable returns. In his own words, he said, quote, "You give me $20,000, it's guaranteed that you'll receive 60% in a year." However, this was far from what happened. People had no idea they were falling into his scam. Investigators said that his radio show had many red flags. During his broadcast, he would continuously enforce the idea of being a member of the Haitian community. He did this solely to gain their trust, using clever phrases such as, quote, "one of you." He also made it clear that the opportunities were limited so that the listeners could take action immediately. He was smart in the fact that he not only built his trust within the Haitian community, but also created urgency among the listeners, which caused them to take action out of fear. By promising them 60% in return on investment, he scammed millions of dollars from the locals. He even went as far as to target the Haitian community at churches. His victims were simply supporting the luxurious lifestyle that he was living. There weren't any available court records for Bersequot's charges back in 2014. However, in May 2018, he was caught in another scheme where he was preparing tax returns for other people. A federal court in Miami, Florida, permanently stopped Bersequot's and another partner from preparing federal tax returns for other people. Authorities found that Bersequot continually claimed education credits for taxpayers who didn't incur any qualifying expenses. The complaint also alleged that they fabricated business income or expenses for other people in order to qualify for the earned income credit. Number 4. A Mirage. Michael Corta ran an investment company called Oasis International Group. And from 2011 to 2019, he simply took his investors' money, which totaled $80 million, and just spent it on his own lifestyle. According to investigators, Corta and his partners in crime convinced their roughly 700 victims by persuading them that they were, quote, market makers. So they were making huge margins from Forex trades because they had so much volume. They told investors that their investments would be risk-free, quote, for the most part. He also explained that Oasis was well collateralized and had plenty of backing. In reality, Oasis didn't generate any revenue at all, and all the earnings that Oasis made were just a mirage. Once he got investor money, Corta just went to town. For example, he bought a Maserati and a Range Rover for his family members. He also bought at least one Ferrari, 2 Benzes, and a Porsche with investor funds. And those are just the cars that the government was able to seize. He also took his family on several trips via private jet, taking them around expensive vacation spots such as Europe and the Cayman Islands. He also purchased multi-million-dollar homes in Florida. After a 13-day trial, a federal jury found Corta guilty for his Ponzi scheme. Even though the trial took over 13 days, it took the jury less than 4 hours of discussion to convict Corta of his crimes. He was also convicted of underreporting his income in 2017. He had claimed negative income for the year and got a tax refund instead. His sentencing will be happening at a later date as of the release of this video, but he faces a max of 33 years in prison. Number 3. Factored in. Former Georgia legislator Clarence Deal Alford ran a $23 million Ponzi scheme where he targeted people with ancestry or ties to India. He fooled more than 100 investors from the Indian American community into thinking they were investing in a highly lucrative business opportunity. His previous political career made him a key candidate to pull off this scam since he had a trustworthy and respectable professional history. Alford was a General Assembly member in Georgia for 5 terms from 1983 to 1993. Alford was able to run his scam by exploiting a common finance practice that's called factoring. Basically, what factoring is where a company will sell its accounts receivable to a third party at a discount. This way, they have their cash much faster instead of having to wait for the money. Businesses will do this basically just to have cash on hand to pay the bills. Alford's scam was based on completely fake receivable invoices. He was creating fake documents, essentially fake contracts and invoices. He went as far as forging signatures of employees of the state of Georgia. He promised investors that he would use their money for energy projects, but instead, he simply paid off earlier investors. He also used investor money on unrelated projects such as a waste-to-energy project and a solar energy project. Of course, these projects weren't linked to the investors. Alford also used investor money to pay an architect for a personal multi-million-dollar home in Utah. He also bought a Tesla and used the money to pay off credit card debt. We're just wondering, if you're going to run a scam, why bother paying off your credit cards? Judge Robert F. Mumford sentenced Alford to 15 years, where he'll spend 8 years in prison and the remaining 7 years on probation. Alford also had to pay back $8.8 million, along with interest of $1.7 million. Interestingly enough, the judgment was part of a consent agreement where Alford neither admitted to nor denied the allegations. Did Alford just suck so bad at running a legitimate business where it just looked like he was running a scam? Number 2. Not winning. Win Charlebois was charged with operating a Ponzi scheme where he scammed at least 75 investors out of roughly $7.1 million. He took investor funds and moved money all around where it looked like he was running a legitimate fund. But surprise, surprise, that wasn't happening. According to the SEC's complaint, Charlebois basically promised investors return on their money with multiple fake investment opportunities. These fake opportunities range from the purchase and resale of planes, the investment of a variety of private companies, and subscription agreements where funds were supposed to be used to invest in a tech company. Investigators simply found zero cash flow that was linked to any legitimate business. The only cash flow that was coming in was from investors. Most of the new money Charlebois raised from investors and obtained from loans was spent paying former investors and repaying anyone else that was supposed to get money back. Of course, the rest of the money Charlebois used on himself and his family. He used investor funds to pay off his mortgage, debt, and tuition fees for his kids. He even used the money for personal and leisure expenses, such as an exotic vacation. He didn't shy away from spending investor money. He took his family on a ski trip to Beaver Creek, Colorado in January 2021, a 4-day excursion that cost him around $9,100. They stayed at the Ritz and had expenses that included roughly $1,800 for ski access and rentals, and also $1,200 for limo service for the 4-day vacation. In March 2021, Charlebois and his family traveled to Boca Grande, Florida for a week-long vacation. The family splashed around roughly $9,000 again, despite having a negative balance in their joint checking account. Clearly, his spending habits were relentless. The SEC is still seeking to stop Win Charlebois with an asset freeze, as well as making him repay his investors plus interest and civil penalties. Number 1. Serial scamming. Tyler Tisdale was able to con more than $46 million from 77 investors, which included former NFL quarterbacks Carson Palmer and Matt Castle, through his management fund, Cobalt Sports Capital. Tisdale's immediate family, including his parents-in-laws, lost a total of $4 million investing with his fund. Tisdale advertised his company on having access to exclusive deals and running their own successful businesses. However, they only made small loans to entertainers and athletes, and these loans were almost scams in and of themselves, as they were handed out at exorbitant interest rates. According to the DA's office, Tisdale and his business partner, Grant Carter, sold investors on the idea of making massive returns with very little risk. They also completely lied about the business opportunities they had. For example, Tisdale made false claims that his management company was valued at $15 million. He also said that the company's private label wine business, Curious Cork Import LLC, alone was going to be worth $25 million soon. They told investors that they could expect to see 10 to 15 times their investment. Instead, the 3 investors he and Grant pitched that deal to lost a total of $500,000. For that little stunt, they were actually charged back in 2020, and as part of their plea deal, they paid back the $500,000 to those investors. In court, Tisdale's attorney argued that Tisdale shouldn't go to prison because he didn't, quote, line his with the investors' money. He argued that he invested their money in legitimate companies. The only thing he wasn't clear on was being dishonest with investors about where that money was going. And, that little thing about the risk of the investments. His lawyer, Fred Winokur, argued that Tisdale wasn't a Ponzi schemer and that he believed in the companies he advertised. He also tried to convince the jury that Tisdale was doing what was in the best interest of his investors and lenders. He also pointed out that his own parents and immediate family lost their money too investing with Tisdale, and would he scam his own family? Winokur argued that Tisdale had the best of intentions, but he simply was in over his head. He was blinded by his pride and his desire to maintain his reputation. However, prosecutor I.L. Shamsuddin pointed out that Tisdale used money from new investors to pay old investors. We all know what exactly that means. He argued that Tisdale knew exactly what he was doing, and he knew what he was doing was wrong. He also asked that Tisdale be sentenced to 6 years in prison. Tyler Tisdale pleaded guilty in June of 2021, and prosecutor Shamsuddin got his wish. Tisdale was sentenced to 6 years in prison, as well as having to pay back more than $18 million in restitution.
Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comments section below. Would you rather gain 120 pounds and get $3 million, or lose 40 pounds and get 30 grand?